Yet. Oh, yeah, we are.
And we are live. Thanks everybody for joining. I know we got Antonio at least. He's been there. He's been waiting patiently. So we thank you, Antonio, and anyone else who might join. Welcome to the big show. Now, normally it's just me and Jeff, but we actually have a couple guests.
Some really special guests this week. I'm excited to work with these two fellas.
Alec and
I are special in our own way.
Oh, yeah. We all are.
Well, anyway, everybody knows me. Everybody knows Jeff. Everybody should know you two, but go ahead and introduce yourselves. JD, go first.
Sure. Hey, everybody, I'm JD. I have my own channel, do my own Instagram stuff, do a lot of I'm part of The Hunt with Jeffrey and Tony Sanders, and I have a new show coming in February 12th called Stranger Things with Mr. TJ Watson himself.
That's going to be awesome.
That'll be a fun show.
All right, Whitewell.
Hey, my name's Alec. I run a channel called Whitewell Comics, and I'm apparently coming to you from the shadows today because I can't get any light on my face.
Well, I thought I was being macabre today.
Yeah, but, I'm here, and I do a show every Wednesday with my buddy John from John's Comics with Kids called New Comic Book Day Book Club on Wednesday nights.
All right. Well, the topic for the show today, everybody, is what our favorite artist is. So what I figured we'll do is everyone will just announce who their favorite artist is, maybe a quick reason why, and then basically we're going to discuss why our artist is the best artist, and basically it'll just probably end in a big fight. So we'll figure it out. But anyway, before we do that, Jeff, why don't you welcome the chat, and then we'll get started.
What's going on, guys? I hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday afternoon. I guess depending upon where you are, it could still be Sunday morning. But we've got Sam's Tangled Web. Great to see you, Sam. Jason P. Budget Collecting. I have been seeing you all over the place, Jason P. Thank you for tuning in today. We've also got Mr. Garrell, the man. Mr. Garrell, great dude. I really appreciate having you in my life as a friend. You really helped me through a lot. I appreciate it. Hulk Nuts 911. Comics and Deadlifts. If you guys don't know Hulk Nuts, he just started a show with I Got Issues. They are basically sitting on there and talking about all the stuff that a lot of people are not willing to say, scared to say a little bit, whatever. You might call it controversial, but I do enjoy that. So it's always good to see you, Hulk Nuts. Antonio Zapata, thank you for tuning in today, Antonio. I have seen you in every show that we have done, and we really appreciate your support today. Soldier Only, boom, good to see you, buddy. Bake the Snake, always good to have you around, Bake. I really appreciate it. If you guys haven't checked it out, Bake's got a few videos up on his channel he has been doing, so go give him a little bit of love. Joshua Sanders, thank you for stopping by today, my friend. What we got going on today, man, we have an epic battle. Well, I don't know the real battle, but we are going to be discussing some of our favorite artists, and we will tell you a little bit about them and why we think that they are the best. So sit back, and hopefully you guys will enjoy.
Jeff, you're one of the best at that. Thanks, man. Now, I figure we'll do this in ascending order of epic beardness. So we'll start with Jeffrey, who's the baby. Then I'm the child, then JD's the adult, and Whitewell's a sea pipe.
That's a good way to put it.
All right, so Jeff, what's your
Okay, so my favorite artist, well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him and why before I give his name away. But growing up, this guy has been an artist for the Incredible Hulk. And when I think of the Incredible Hulk, this is the Incredible Hulk that I envision. I know there's been a lot of different incantations, but this guy, Mr. Herb Trimpe, is my favorite artist. It was close. It was super hard. There's a couple other guys that I was kind of going back and forth with, but ultimately when it came down to who I thought was the best, my favorite is Herb Trimpe. I think he's got some of the most iconic Incredible Hulk covers that there is. I don't know. It's just the Hulk is Herb Trimpe. Herb Trimpe to me is the Hulk.
Well, as for me, my favorite artist, I have to say his realism and the beauty of his work is to me unparalleled. Anyway, my favorite artist is Alex Ross.
Oh, Yes,
This is a cover of Space Ghost #1, the mini where he did all the covers. And
dude.
man, I just love this guy. He's awesome.
He is. He was high up on my list too, and it was a thought that he might be the one that I went with. But I just felt like some of his more epic work was a little newer, and I just wanted to go with what I thought was for me, a little more iconic. But no, Alex Ross is killing it on these Immortal Hulk runs, dude. Like, okay, 20 years from now when we look back, I'm pretty sure this Immortal Hulk is going to be an iconic for a series, especially with the Alex Ross covers. I feel like, at least.
I think it's, for me, like some of his best work.
Yeah.
I think Alex Ross's work on Immortal Hulk has been reminiscent of something very special.
It's definitely, he stepped up his game, and I'll once we get into the discussion, I'll share why I say that. But yes, Immortal Hulk, Alex Ross, really good.
JD?
Well, I went a little older, but I didn't go too far back. You're not going to hear me say Wally Wood, LB Cole, Alex Schoenberg, or...
I'll tell you, Buscema was on my list.
Buscema would be
heard
too
you say
obvious
all
if I
those
did.
names.
Yeah, Buscema would be on that list, but I'm going to go with Mr. Bernie Wrightson.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but that should have been.
I mentioned him pretty much at least once a show. I mentioned Buscema about 9 times a show. So, honorable, that's why I think of him is first of all, I want to say that this is probably the hardest decision to make. I mean, it's asking who your favorite child is, because there are different reasons that I like different artists. And,
absolutely.
And I think it's great because my favorite would be the one that, as much as iconic John is and everything else, and everything I do, everything he does, he loves. There's an artist aspect to it, and Bernie's my favorite artist, not just in comic books, but in other things he's done as well.
Just so you know, JD, I have to concede a little bit of space towards you. My favorite cover ever is an Alex Ross. It's this one right here.
John Buscema.
Oh, yeah.
There it is. Got to put the counter up. That's one John Buscema.
I had this. This is a Buscema cover. I was, tempted with that. Man, like Bernie Wrightson, funny story real quick, talking about Bernie Wrightson is I was talking to somebody the other day about Swamp Thing. And they were like, you know what? I really love Swamp Thing, but I don't know anything really about it. Like, do you? And I was like, oh, yeah, man, for sure. I know that Bernie Wrightson is one of the artists for Swamp Thing.
There you go.
You know why? Because of JD.
There you go. The first 10 issues. Correct.
That's right.
And House of Secrets 92. So 11 issues, I guess.
And he's named Alec, like me.
Yes.
Which I always bring up. So you can drink on that one, too.
Spelled the same way?
Yeah, ALEC.
All right, go ahead, Alec.
Alec Holland. I think JD thought I maybe was going to pick Bernie Wrightson because we talk about him a lot. But I think this will be no surprise to anyone, really. It's Mike Mignola.
Okay.
Oh, he was my number 2. He was.
Mike Mignola.
I got it, Man, he's got some great work, dude.
He just has, I've talked about him ad nauseum, but he
epic runs on the Incredible Hulk. I had this prepared because I was thinking Big Will might take Herb Trimp because first appearance of Wolverine was done by Herb Trimp. So I have my Mignola for backup just in case.
He's just like, he has such a strong style that it is artistically unique, and it just, I don't know, it speaks to me more so than a lot of artists who are, technically really good. Jim Lee and Michael Turner and all these people, like I love their work, but it doesn't have that certain something to me that puts them at the top of my list like Mike Mignola does.
I always compare Mike Mignola to a Picasso. In other words, there are certain artists you can look at and say, I know who did that. And with Jim Lee, if it's an X-Men drawing, But if Jim Lee would have drew a flower, you wouldn't necessarily recognize it as Jim Lee. If Mike Mignola drew a flower, you'd know it'd be Mike Mignola.
Sure, and
that's the uniqueness of him that
I can flip to a page in here and find something that would back that up. But
no, that's exactly right. That's why Mignola and Trimpe are two of my tops, because when I look at a Trimpe or a Mignola cover, I know that is done by them. You know, Milgram, Al Milgram, he was really high up on there too. But just for me, Trimpe and Mignola, dude, man, they're just iconic, man.
So I do have 2 runners up, but I don't know if we're going to do that at all. So
yeah, we'll let you guys decide if we do runners up. But
here you go. Here's a good panel. These birds just chilling there.
That's
yeah. Like if I don't know. So
I will start the fighting then.
Yeah.
I personally do not like the more Picasso-style artists like Mignola. I mean, I'm not going to say he's not good.
Yeah,
amazing artist.
Clearly,
I personally don't like it.
Clearly, it's quite in contrast to your pick.
Yeah, I believe it was Neil Adams that said style is basically what you're doing wrong, even though people may like it. So while Alex Ross does have some style, I think he's one of the more real. There are other realistic looking artwork that you can find in comics, but to me, his is some of the best, and I just love it, man. To me, if I want to know what they would look like in real life, I would look at an Alex Ross piece of art.
I don't know if we're starting the fighting yet, and but I have a counterpoint to that.
All right, go.
To the Neil Adams quote about style being mistakes or whatever. I think that if you look at art throughout history, there, you know, throughout the Renaissance, through, you know, the 1800s or so, there is this huge concentration on making everything look as realistic as possible and perfecting what is reality in a painting. And the technicality that it takes to create something like that, I'm not taking anything away from. But once the camera was invented, artists were then able to do something other than recreate reality. And I understand in comic books, there is no reality, so there's nothing. So something like an Alex Ross, there is that draw to it because it is creating something real that is not. But for me, in a medium like comics, style is of like that would be at the top of my list as far as like stylistic choice and stylistic execution. For me is the number one thing I look at when I look at if an artist is top tier for me.
That's an amazing point. And to get to Ross, and this is not a knock on Alex Ross. I do like Alex Ross quite a bit. Actually, I seek out Ross covers when I see them, and I've been a fan of his for a while. And he has an amazing run, and even his hardcover omnibus book style things are very hot and hard to come by. Alex Ross is very good, but I haven't yet to see Alex Ross create something that wasn't there before. It's my opinion, and Alec went to art school, but this is my undergrad art training and everything else like that I had, which was learning about the history of art. Is a bowl of fruit became the most common thing to be painted because it was a bowl of fruit, and everybody could paint a bowl of fruit. Van Gogh decided to take that bowl of fruit and throw it in a wheat field and make it macabre. So I always say, you know, I compare everything to various eras of artists, and the Cubist would be Mike Mignola. The Van Gogh style to me is Bernie Wrightson. The Alex Ross is very much a realist. Not knocking him. I mean, I have realist paintings of wine and cheese and grapes and everything else. And there's a medium for that in comics. I agree with that, especially the covers. The intensity he does is amazing, Alex Ross. My argument about the Mignola, why I like the differential in the unreal versus the real, is what Mignola did. And while I'm not I do love Hellboy, and I'm not the craziest Hellboy fan. I'm much more of a Constantine stuff afterwards. But the impact he did when he drew something that was different, the attraction of it was there. But he created it, so there's that. I own it. I could do what I want with it aspect, and to go to a publisher with that story and have that somebody take that takes chops. You know what I mean? That takes nads. That makes sense, Alex?
Yeah, and I mean, again, to kind of parrot JD a little bit, I don't want to take anything away from Alex Ross either. I'm not saying that
not at all.
He is any less of an artist than any of the other people on this list. In fact, you know, his technicality and his ability to do what he does for 20 plus years now, 25, 30 years is
underrated. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of unmatched to have the consistency in his career and the you know, the praise that he has been given throughout the years for his work is well deserved.
Absolutely.
It's just for me, you know, I remember when Marvels first came out, and I agree with you, Big Will, that I saw that and I was like, holy smokes, like, you know, this is what these superheroes, like, I've seen these for the first time as realistic as possible, because, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't out at that time or anything like that. Closest we had was the X-Men cartoon. And so
go ahead.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, it definitely blew me away, and his work still does. But and maybe this is biased because I don't even know why, but this goes back to why I was saying the Immortal Hulk run is so much of a higher tier for me.
It's so high up there for me.
Because so much of his older work was strictly from reference. And there's nothing wrong with working from reference. I work from reference. You have to work from reference sometimes. But the Immortal Hulk stuff looks like it's coming straight from his brain to his hand. And it is better for it, I think. It benefits from that. So
I kind of use music references a lot when it comes down to artists. Alex Ross is there, but the music reference I'm going to do is the album. I think if, you know, the early Beatles albums and everything else, Alex Ross's were all his covers up until there. And if there's a Mount Rushmore on modern comic book artists, Alex Ross is definitely on there. Okay, there's 4 that I consider to be my favorite modern artist one, and Alex Ross is on my Mount Rushmore of modern artists. But what he is I think his Immortal Hulk is literally a Sgt. Pepper album of what he did. It's the album that took the Beatles, you know, it's just the way I put it, you know, it's his Sgt. Pepper. It's his perfect conglomeration, whether it be the White Album, whatever. But what he did is so much different than, like, he took modern, like, there you have it. It's a great book right there. I was talking about the Alex Ross book. That's perfect. So
yeah, this is a literal album that he did a reference from.
I mean, that's the thing. Alex Ross is, there is a Rushmore. He's on it for my modern guys, you know.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like, okay, back to we talked about Mignola being so abstract. 2 of my favorite Incredible Hulk covers are actually Mignola covers. Like, you can see this one. This is just, I mean, all it is an Incredible Hulk, but he used like the background and made it an incredible picture just by placing a solo picture of the Incredible Hulk right there. And if you can tell, he's got some amazing looking feet right there.
The gnarly toes.
Yeah, right. And then this one right here, like, just look at that picture, the face of the Incredible Hulk right there. It just looks so savage, man. Like, you got Bruce Banner being sacrificed by this chick right there. I mean, like, some of the most incredible work I've ever seen is by Mike Mignola, no doubt.
All right. Now,
We love Ross.
You got more to say about Ross? I feel like I kind of bogarted your time there.
Oh no, that's fine. I was just going to ask: does your favorite artist that you have your favorite cover? My favorite artist does not have my favorite cover. Does yours, like, is your favorite cover a Mignola cover, Alec, or is it a different artist?
So my favorite cover of all time is not a Mignola cover, no.
All right. What about you, JD?
No, my favorite cover is a John Buscema's.
Let me grab it.
Yeah, my favorite cover. If anybody doesn't know, tune into any of my shows. It's
Thor.
it's the Thor Silver Surfer. You can see the big painting on the wall. That's a painting. So that gives you an idea. That's an entire homage to them with statues, and I've got every variant of that done except for Do You Poo. That's the one I'm working on.
Hey, you want one?
I need the Silver Surfer 4 version of Do You Poo.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I almost won one, and it's like 25. I know I could see him at a con, and he'll probably have one, but
I don't have that one. I have a random one that I'm trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
This is my favorite cover of all time by one of my, spoiler alert, 2 runner-up artists.
Oh, does that got Jubilee on it?
Of course,
It sure does. Of course it does. What do you think? Generation X #1. It's really hard to see because it's slabbed and it's shiny, but Chris Bacalo was on my short list, and I'll talk about him later if you want. But that's my favorite cover. So no, Mike Mignola did not do my favorite cover.
What about you, Jeff? Your favorite cover?
My favorite cover is a Diodato Jr.
That's what
Incredible Hulkish #50.
Yep, that's what I was hoping. Good.
Is how do you pronounce that correctly? Is it Trimp or Trimpy? How did he pronounce it?
I don't know. Half the time I pronounce it Trimp, the other half I say Trimpy. So
Just call him Herbie. We call him Herbie.
Go ahead.
Just to be safe.
yeah, exactly.
Just split it up.
Yeah. It's kind of like Perez. Everyone says Perez, but apparently that little thing above the E means you're supposed to pronounce it Perez.
Correct. He does.
He always thanks you when you say it the right way.
Yes, he does.
Much like Mike Mignola, which I called him Mignola for so long until I met him.
You can go back and watch some of my earlier videos. I did the same thing until I started hearing other people say Mignola, and then I was like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
I've heard Buscema.
From me?
Buscema, and I'm like, I had to find it, and I had to ask Stephanie, is it really Buscema? And she goes, yes, it's not Buscema. And she goes, my uncle tells me all the time, don't let anybody mispronounce our name, because nobody has ever said it right twice. So, so I think that's a great one. His uncle, that would be Sal Buscema, which said that. Stephanie, by the way, does the My Little Pony run again. She's back on the My Little Ponies run.
Yeah, Jason P said, "What Jubilee? Can't believe she came up."
Well, I want to
stream, you know.
I do think I want to say one more about Alex Ross that I didn't. I might have seemed like I was knocking him a little bit. I put him on my Rushmore, but one thing Alex did.
You guys say Alex Ross, the more I count points in my column.
Right. One thing I'm going to say about Alex Ross that prior to Immortal Hulk, there was another run he was doing, and he did some Avengers runs where he was doing. They started off as like variants, and then he did the common. And as a fan of Thor and as a fan of the Avengers as a whole, he brought it back to me the way it was done, where currently it's like Ribic does it and he's his own paint. He's like Frazetta in his own way, but he's not Frazetta. But the way Ross did that, he made me buy books again. He made me buy runs that I wasn't going to buy anymore. Alex Ross did that. Judging a book by its cover, I did because of Alex Ross.
Now, there's one thing I'd like to show about Alex Ross. Then the whole reason I got both of you on, along with Jeffrey, as I knew once we started, I could let you two go and you give us art knowledge. But, there is a 6-issue miniseries that he did for DC that no one ever seems to mention. And one of the issues, to me, is the most beautiful piece of cover art I've ever seen of him, period. And I would say it's one of the most beautiful covers I've seen to date. And I just wanted to run through it. The writer for this mini was Joe Kelly, and the interior art was another one of my favorites. he would be one of the runner-ups, Ariel Olivetti.
Oh, very good.
It was the Space Ghost run. This is the number one. I
Wow.
love these covers. And then the number two is right here. And I'll let you know which one I think is really, really beautiful when I get to it. And this is just a real origin, like a real superhero origin of Space Ghost. It didn't just do the TV show. It was as if he was a character in the actual DC universe, although he's on his own, of course.
Have you read these books, Big Will?
Yes, I've read them. I own multiple copies. I own the trade. I love the story. I love the interior art, and the cover art is amazing.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, but the cartoon of the Space Ghost was kind of like a wacky comedy kind of cartoon, correct?
Yeah, it was a Hanna-Barbera thing. It was at the end they all laugh, and he had kid sidekicks. And
is the comic book in the same way, or is it more of a serious kind of a thing?
It's real. The characters are all there, but it's as if he is a Batman-esque with superpowers character, kind of like Hal Jordan. He was an officer in some sort of corps.
Okay.
And now, issue 5 is the one that I think is beautiful. I took it out of its thing, and I hope you can see it in the light. But to me, I love this cover. It's just him firing one of his bands right into the camera.
Yeah, I can see
Love
it now. That's pretty
Love
cool.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And then the final issue of the series, which again, I think this is a very overlooked series for interior art, cover art, and the writer. This is the final one, number 6. And that's Jan and Jace, the 2 children he adopted.
Yep. I can't say thank you enough for showing me that, because I'm very interested in the series. I am. I mean, I'm gonna
put it on your want list.
I'm actually gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna call somebody. I'm very. I actually Hanna-Barbera stuff, whether it be the Herculoids. I'm dating myself. The Herculoids, Magilla Gorilla, Catch the Pigeon, whatever you wanted to do. When Space Ghost was on, it was hard not to want to be him for Halloween, and then because they had that bracelet on his arm, the 3 buttons, it made sense to me. It was easy. He's got the powers there. I didn't know anything about what he did because there's no background or anything. It just looked real cool, and he had a cape, and that was pretty cool too. I always thought it was really special, and to see this DC run that I've never seen before, and I thank you, Big Will, because that's 90% of the community has given me is you've made me spend my money on things I've never thought I'd ever buy.
Well, hey, one question. Does anyone know what has happened to Ariel Olivetti? Because he did the interior work, and while it's more of a non-realistic style, I do enjoy his work. I mean, but I haven't seen him do anything in years.
I have not.
And I haven't heard his name on anything in years. He did this. He did the covers for War Journal in like 2006, 2007 for Marvel, as well as Cable, and the interiors for the first like 8 or 10 issues, and then dropped off the map. I haven't heard hide nor hair of him.
Is he European?
Digital artist like Clayton Crane is.
Oh,
is he European?
I think he's French.
Yeah.
So those European guys, they're expensive, by the way.
Yeah, and they also there's a whole different community over there for comics so he might be prolifically working in European comics, and we just don't see it over here.
All right. So,
Cool. I love
Jeff, you got anything, or we're gonna let these other 2 guys teach us stuff?
Yeah, I have a few names of some other artists that I really enjoy that were tough to not put on here, but I didn't. One was Al Milgrom. I talked about Mignola a little bit. Talked a little bit about Deodato Jr., but Dick Ayers. Dick Ayers did a lot of work on some of the early runs of the Incredible Hulk that I really enjoy as well, and just kind of wanted to give him a little bit of love since we were talking about it.
He was Kirby's inker and he was Marvel's main inker from the 40s on. I mean, he's he's a legend there. Dick Ayers is one of those guys that I think is underlooked, but he's an original he's a bullpenner. You know what he was in the bullpen. And if you ever look at anything from the Strange Tales, any of the Strange Tales or Tales to Astonish or even Tales to Suspense, almost every major Marvel book of the pre-superhero age and post early part of the superhero age, you'll always see Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Dick Ayers. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Dick Ayers. And like I was going over books before in my pile over here that I was going through, and Dick Ayers kept coming up on a lot of the books I was going through, some Tales to Astonish and some Strange Tales. And I go back to I'm actually looking at some Golden Age Atlas stuff, and Dick Ayers' name's all in it.
Yep.
And I think it's great.
Sorry, that's why I want to talk about him, because when I was looking through my Tramp books and my I came across a lot. It'd be like Tramp would do like 4 or 5 books, and then there would be one that didn't have his name on it, and I'd open it up, and it'd be like, oh, Dick Ayers. And then I'd do the same, 4 or 5 more Tramp books, open it up, oh, this one was done by Dick Ayers. So, like you said, bullpen, maybe like some fill-in work here and there or something, but I really enjoy what he did.
Yeah. I have a question for Alec and JD that'll get y'all started possibly. Do you think there is something to be said about the increase in the love of the cover artist when they almost never do interior stuff, even though I'm sure most of them have? Like Alex Ross is, when he started, he was doing covers, and then he also did, Marvel's, Justice, Kingdom Come, where he did the interior stuff. But nowadays you have like the Matina, I forget, I don't know, I'm not up on the newer names that are mainly cover artists, and you never really see them do interior work. Do you think we've forgotten the interior artist, or especially with everything being slabbed, or what's your opinion on that? Just throwing that out there.
I'm going to let Alex go with this, but I'm going to say this: sequential art is a different art than cover art. Sequential art is why I kind of like Bernie so much, is his sequential art surpasses his covers, and that's there. As well as John Buscema, in my opinion, his sequential art surpassed his cover art. Just look at Savage Sword of Conan alone. I do think the Dawn of the Variant cover and the European influence has something to say about that, because mostly you talk about the cover artists. I'll bring up Marko Jerkovic, for example. Somebody asked some Marvel, why doesn't he do anything else other than covers? And they say, because it takes him 6 months to do a cover. How long do you think it would take him to do a book? So, Alec, you want to talk about sequential arts?
Yeah, I was going to say, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No, it's no problem. I think that, back in the day, they just hired an artist to do a book. And I think some artists can do both, and some can do both really well. But there are artists who are very specialized and can do amazing cover pinup pieces, but not only don't have the ability for their style to do sequential art. Sequential art is not just being able to draw well. It's being able to tell a story with your pictures. And as you've seen me complain on Book Club, if you ever watched it, about how many times I complain about people dropping the ball when it comes to telling a story with their pictures. So I think that, the industry has kind of just like pushed those two things, kind of wedged them apart, and not necessarily for a bad reason. Because I think, we do get better covers and we still get great interiors. But it is only a drag when you get this beautiful cover and then you open the book and it looks like a turd.
Yeah,
I actually broke out some photocopies for this to talk about sequential art, because it was one of those things I was hoping, and leave it to Big Will for throwing the bomb out there, the perfect bomb, sequential art. This is an example of original. This is not original. This is a photocopy I took of an original. I don't know if you guys remember when the guy came in with original pieces. He made a bunch of photocopies for me on it. And this is from an Avengers piece, the Red Wolf one. This is a John and Sal Buscema sequential art. And it's telling the story. If you bought the cover art was John, but the interior is his brother here as well as the inking. They kind of combined on a lot. sequential art tells the story as it goes along, and it's a lost art form. Alec is a billion times correct on that. I think sequential art was my biggest problem with modern comics. I blamed bad writing, but I think the writing today is better than it's ever been, because, you know, there's some runs of books that were just terrible writing, but the sequential art made up for it. Now you've got almost an exact swing the opposite way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's a huge concentration on being able to draw well, and you know that started in the '90s with, you know, Jim Lee can certainly tell a story sequentially, but you know this need to be that, to have this highly rendered, you know, very, like, you open a page and you look at that drawing instead of reading it and saying, oh, that makes sense and I can understand what's happening.
I actually found myself reading the words and passing over the art for the first time in a while when I was reading the Cosmic Ghost Rider. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And while as good as Donny Cates is as a writer, and there are exceptions, Ryan Stegman is definitely an exception, who does cover and interior phenomenal. Ryan Stegman is an underrated one, but who's modern, who does today, who works with his writers very well. That's the other thing. The partnership of writer and artist and interior artist, it's almost like it's a courtship of watching it develop. And I think that may or may not be going on because we get so many volumes. I mean, we get 6 issues canceled, reboot, everything's gone. We don't really see anything where you had 3 years of the same people, or the entire, I don't know if anybody's a Spectacular Spider-Man run, but that's historical because Sal Buscema did every single interior sequential page in every single one. Not one is not him. That's crazy to do that for 138 issues or whatever it is.
I think Mark Bagley broke the record with Ultimate Spider-Man, but he didn't do that whole run.
Right. Yeah. That I think that's the exception. But you're talking about, that's why we talk about Bagley and, you know, or in their own right. If today if I ask you a sequential artist, I mean, I always bring up Ryan Stegman and guys like that. But if you want to, I actually find indie, and Alec, you might agree with me or you might not agree with me. Indie books today, like the Boom Studios and the Aftershock and everything else, where the writer gets with an artist and they work together for several issues in a row, that art and the interior has surpassed anything from the mainstream, because it seems to me as if Marvel has a bullpen of interior artists that don't even speak to the writer, that don't.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because Jason P is just said in the chat, I also wonder if the writers are not working well with their artists. And I don't know if it's necessarily that they're not working well with them, is that they're handed a script and they say, here, draw this. Where you're right, like with an indie book, it's a collaborative work between the two. And so they're working hand in hand, and they're, you know, making the decisions together, which is,
right. And I could see if you have like a full 12 issues already under the belt between a writer and a sequential artist, you could just hand him a script and say, draw it the way, do that voodoo that you do so well.
You know? Get what we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I bring up this example from Silver Surfer 10 as an example. I mean, Submariner 10. This is a 1-page panel that Stan, you know, they were writing it and everything else. And there's it is. And it was, and the notes on the sides, which is why I actually buy this stuff, is the notes. And it's Gene Colan did this. And Gene Colan was literally asked on here, make it intense. That's it. And now you'd think that Gene Colan doesn't need that stuff, but Gene Colan is just Gene Colan. I kind of bring up Gene Colan as one of the best sequential artists of all time, up there with Barry Windsor Smith.
Oh, yeah, I was going to mention Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah, I don't know how to put him in a category on his own, and Jack Kirby, because Barry Windsor Smith is not just one-trick pony in any way, shape, or form. Not that anybody we're saying is. It's just what Barry Windsor Smith can do is he takes the cover, and the cover is a part of the entire sequential because it's the same guy. When Barry did just interior work, it was amazing. It's just everything he did was. I have nothing by Barry Windsor Smith. have I ever seen that I didn't say, okay, that's cool. It's kind of like that. So I think he's on my underrated, or not underrated. He's Barry Windsor Smith, but I do think
I think he's underrated. I think you don't hear his name come up a lot in these types of conversations.
Right.
So do you guys think the quality of paper has anything to do with where we're more artist focused, or it seems to be? Like if you look at the 80s, most everything we remember are the X-Men written by Claremont, the Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Frank Miller's Batman, and
Alan Moore's Swamp Thing,
Titans, the Swamp Thing. All those had great artists, but we remember them mainly for the writers that they had. But then in the 90s, somewhere we went from the not really pulp paper, but the one where the inks just pretty much absorbed onto it, to this glossy type of paper that we have now. Do you think that may have done something, or do you think it was a sign of the times, or am I just talking out of my butt and you guys are going to?
I have an opinion about this, but
go ahead. I mean, I'll just say they don't smell as good anymore.
Right.
I think the reason there's such a focus on writers in the 80s is because that's when comics started to change. Late 70s through the 80s is when comics turned from this thing where it's just an adventure book about a character fighting a bad guy into a story that is realized. And you look at Dark Phoenix, you look at Frank Miller stuff, you look at Alan Moore books, and they are more, I don't want to say literary because that sounds snobbish, but they are
the dawn of the arc, maybe the dawn of the story arc.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about the way they started telling stories differently, which is why I think it's so writer focused in the 80s. And then, the new Young Guns of the Image world took over in the 90s, and I think paper quality now definitely has helped to showcase artists' work better.
That's true.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's one reason that helped Alex Ross be as awesome as he is, even to people like me who are laymen looking at art, is because it's so clean. But in 1980, there would be no way to print it
on newsstand.
Yeah. That's a phenomenal point. The other and the computer age. I'm going to bring something out in a little bit. I'll have to just give me a minute to pull it out. I'm going to put out an actual original piece of digital work, if that makes sense to anybody. It's a digital piece from a Captain America book that I purchased, versus a piece that was done literally 20 years before. And the difference, other than the whiteout on the pages and everything else, there's drastic difference. There's no, I don't know how they do it, Alec, because I need a pencil. I don't know how it's done. I use lead. I start with lead, I go to pen, and then I would hand to somebody else off to, I do quite a bit of rendering, but that's just me. But I just kind of think, while you're right, the interior cover pages are much quality now. However, I'm going to say the cover art and the background that covers Marvel pages is crap. Literally, you touch it and half of it comes off. Try to get a black cover and put your hand on the back, and you will have a handprint. I watched the guy buy, sure. And I when I go shopping, I actually pick up a variant that's in a Mylar or something at the shop, and I put all my other books on top of it, and I walk around like this. My hands aren't big enough to palm the way Bueller can, but I sit there with this book and I put everything on top, and then I go to the counter and I literally slide it off, and then I put the variant back if I don't want it, or I end up buying it. He's like, "Do you want that Conan 1 sketch cover?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I forgot about that one, yeah." But that's exactly what I do.
I have a thought. Sorry. Back in the day, comic books were coming out once a month, right? That was the thing. You'd get an issue every month. Do you guys think they're rushing this? Does that have anything to do with art? Because sometimes I feel like I open up a comic book and I'm reading the interior art and it just looks rushed. It just doesn't look like the details there. It doesn't feel like the love has been put into it. And we're getting these certain books that are coming out every week. If you got 7 days, or whatever, I mean, I know they do it in advance, but like if you got less time to do a book, you're probably not putting as much effort or heart into your art, right? Like, I mean, I'm not an artist, so please feel free to step in and tell me your thoughts, but that's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah, I think it's the whole culture of comicdom now, where it's the convention schedules and it's traveling and it's like all this other stuff. Where back in the day, you could sit in your studio and draw 28 days out of the month, whereas now you probably get 14 days out of the month to draw.
I mean, there was a great interview in the 90s I watched. I wish I could remember exactly who the artist was. It might have been Frank Miller, that said, I only got up to go buy more cigarettes. And that it could have been Bernie Wright for all I know, but this is or Buscema for that matter. But that's what it was. And I've heard stories from Bob Hall here in Lincoln about he literally in the 80s doing the Avengers in the 79 to 80s run. He said nobody left the room until we had a month's worth of work. And while everything comes out monthly now, Jeffrey, you're right. Back in the 70s and 80s, many were twice a month. Many of the big issues, including Hulk. I mean, there were 2 issues in Hulk. I mean, 78 is when a lot of things started. I know there were 2 Spider-Mans a month. There was really popular books were always 2 a month. DC was notorious for doing that with carrying 3 books at once with the same storyline. Not really arcs, but you'd have The Brave and the Bold, The World's Finest, Justice League, Superman, Batman was all done at the same time. And then they issued bang, 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 bang right away. Jeffrey, before I say, I want to mention something for you, a Bernie Wrightson Hulk cover.
Oh, wow.
So this is the only one he did, 197. And you got Man-Thing on there. So not only did he draw Man-Thing, he drew Swamp Thing. But you can see that is if you want to know my favorite Hulk cover.
Surprise!
That one right there. Yeah.
Not your favorite artist.
But it's just one of those. I mean, it's just one of those. It's a rare find if you can find it. I'm actually always looking for better condition ones in the hunt. It's not something I'd eBay for it because you can pretty much get them anywhere. But there's your Hulk, Bernie Wrightson style.
Nice. That's pretty cool looking. I don't have that issue, and it's definitely one on the list to get.
197.
All right, well, let's see. It's 1:53. We got a little bit of time here. I'll try and keep it about an hour, but we've gone over by like 5 to 10 minutes every time so far. It really doesn't matter to me. But is there anything that you haven't said yet that either one of our guests here really want to say about art? Because I think a lot of people, like myself, who may have had some education in it but are still laymen, just have an opinion and we think it's informed, but it's not.
Well, I think like everything when it comes to art is opinion. Like you can be the most acclaimed art critic in the world and you still only are, beholden to your own opinion because it's in the eye of the, of the viewer, whether or not it's good or not. So I don't think you should be so hard on yourself on your own opinion, like, or saying, I don't know if you're trying to say that our opinion counts more because I went to art school or whatever, but
I'm saying you know more about the ins and out of how to create art than most people.
Sure. Okay. I did want to just chuck out a couple other names. Like I said, Chris Bacalo,
Witching Hour.
Witching Hour is tremendous. And if you look at something like Death, The High Cost of Living, which is some of his early stuff, and you look at his work in this, it's, he tells the story very well and it's perfectly serviceable. But when you look at something like The Witching Hour, and I know not everyone is the biggest fan of his style, but his artistry and the decisions that he made stylistically and be quiet, pup. He really, I feel like, I'm trying to find some good pages. Like the things he does with the black and white, and there's, stuff going on the borders, and really, really interesting and powerful choices, I think. David Mack.
Yeah.
You talk about artistry, and you talk about doing unique things with pages and panels. This is an art book that happens to have words in it. I mean, look at that.
Dang.
You know, that's something else than what a lot of people you think of comics, and I think that what he does well is very hard to replicate, and you know, not a lot of people are kind of brave enough to do something like that and put it out, and he is I think underrepresented when it comes to top artists. Also throw out two other names, Mike Allred and David Mazzucchelli.
Mike Allred's classic. Right. I was going to mention him for his runs on books. I was going to do more Bernie Wrightson, but I think it's hard to argue anybody's artist is better than anybody else. I'll just throw that out there. I mean, Alec will tell you right now that the detail Bernie puts in a page is, I don't think it's matched by anybody or ever has been. But Bernie's best work isn't in comics. It's the Frankenstein book. If you don't own Mary Shelley Frankenstein or ever seen Mary Shelley Frankenstein illustrated by Bernie Wrightson, Google it. Tell me what you think of the images. It is his favorite work. That's his Sgt. Pepper. Actually, he claims that that's his favorite piece. One of the things about art is you take a bowl of spaghetti with meatballs on it, and you take it and you look at a white wall and you throw it against the wall. Whatever fell on the floor, don't care about. What's stuck to the wall, that's where you start. And I think that's what makes art fun to me, is even in our brains, that stuff that sticks still in our heads is, let's say it's the love of comic books. Everything else that's gone on in the world, just let it go on the floor. But the stuff that's stuck in your brain, artists have that ability to take what they love and draw it. And if an artist is drawing what he loves, it shows on the paper. If an artist is drawing what they don't love, it also shows on the paper. And I think I always say Buscema, as great as he was, hated doing superheroes early, and it was obvious. I mean, his X-Men run is borderline passable. I mean, he did 3 X-Men, and he did not like the story. He did not like the X-Men. He never wanted to do them again. He didn't until he did. I mean, literally, it showed in it so much that John Romita had to redo John Buscema's work. That's how crazy it was. He liked Thor and Silver Surfer because Stan said, just do what you want with it, make it their own. And those characters he changed from being ultra superhero and everything else and drawing comics the Marvel way to where it became less about the superpower and more about the super pose. You know,
I thought you were going in a very different direction with that spaghetti metaphor.
Well, actually, Bernie Wrightson used that metaphor on an interview. He actually said, my brain is a plate of spaghetti, and I throw everything on the wall. Whatever falls on the ground, that's okay. But whatever's stuck to that wall, that's mine.
I thought you were going to say you can throw a bowl of spaghetti at the wall and call it art, and then it's art, but it doesn't mean you have to like it.
Yeah,
that's what I thought he was going with too.
Yeah. Well, that was I kind of appreciate the love everybody shows for each other's artists here, and no knock to Herb Trimpe in any way. We didn't really talk about him, but Herb, like Bernie, like Mignola, no offense, Alex Ross, created characters, and I think we always know the first Wolverine what he looks like. You know. Oh
yeah.
We always know.
I will concede that to you. Alex Ross, to my knowledge, has not really created anything.
I'd say the Space Ghost was pretty impressive, but it was not out of. It was
not created though.
Right.
Yeah. What you one thing I'll say about Bernie Wrightson, and I use this as a knock on some artists, so I will say that I'm saying this as a compliment, is that he puts a lot of lines in his work.
This is a face. I'm going to show a face drawing. That's just a face.
But every line that he puts in has a purpose. And when I usually use it as a knock on somebody's work, it's because, like, it's the McFarlane effect of just like, oh, let me just put a lot of lines and call it detail. Whereas he put in a lot of lines and it was all detail. It was all very intentional and pays off in every drawing he does.
It's one of those where that Frankenstein, when Dr. Frankenstein is sitting in a chair in his lab and all those books are on the shelf, every book is drawn separately and there's thousands of them. That's why it took 7 years to do. I mean, 7 years it took him to do that because he wanted it to be his best work. And he actually in an interview said, 20 years ago, I did my best work ever. Not many artists are going to admit that, but that's my best work I've ever done. I'm never going to do anything as good as that. And I love the fact that he admitted that.
Yeah, Jason P. Budget Collecting just said, holy moly, just Googled Wright and Frankenstein. That stuff is unbelievable. So I did the same thing. And yeah, you're not kidding, man.
And I pissed off Hulk nuts by insulting Todd McFarlane.
Well, speaking of insulting the Todd father, I figured, let's see, it's 2:01. Let's do a quick lightning round here before we get out of here. Just name the artist. Is there an artist that you love their cover work but hate their interior work? And I'll go first, then Jeffrey, so you other guys have time to think.
Ooh, yeah, I wasn't
Mine
ready
is
for this
Todd
one.
McFarlane. I hate his interior. I love his covers. Jeff?
Oh man, like honestly, I don't even really know. I don't think I can really give a great answer on this. I don't know. Some of the new art, like the guys who do the cover art, like that new Thor run 2018, the Thor run by Jason Aaron and somebody else, like
Saad Ribic.
Yeah, the covers weren't the greatest to begin with, but that's
his thing.
Yeah, but then I opened it up and I thought the art inside was terrible. Like in my opinion, like some people maybe that's their art style and they enjoy it, but I felt like the art to me felt rushed, which was part of the reason. That was what was in my head when I asked you guys about the timelines and if you felt like things were being rushed, because that comic book, the interior art felt rushed to me.
Brief thing on the Thor run, he has so many guest artists do the interior. I've never known people to do sequential. Tony Moore did a few of them. Tony Moore of Walking Dead fame, he did a lot of some of the interiors, and then there was some that were done by Itzhak Ribic, and there was some that were done, and they're totally different, totally like light years of difference. I mean, but that's the thing with that Thor run. I agree with you. I think it's Aaron God of Thunder was his best run, and I'm not crazy about the next two, but
yeah.
So, but the interior works are done by different people every time. I don't know which one you didn't like, but I don't really like it. I like Tony Moore's work. I mean, Alec can probably say that he likes Tony Moore's work too, but I wouldn't.
Soldier Only just said Sam Neill is one I've never been a fan of. I'm actually a really big fan of Sam Neill. I think he's a top tier talent right now, but I mean, I can see he's definitely, much like Mignola, has like a heavy style. So it might not be for everybody, but I think he's going back to storytelling and sequential art. I think he is excellent at it. But I don't really have an answer to your question specifically, or I wasn't prepared for it. I will say that a lot of times cover artists who are more I guess kind of ethereal or painterly or whatever, not so much like Alex Ross, but when you get into an interior of a book and it's just like muddy and painty, and I think it doesn't really work on covers. I think it can really pay off well. So it's more of like a artists who are less traditional in like the pen and ink style art, who do interiors, are the ones who I'd rather see do covers.
I'm gonna have to. I hate to do this to you, Big Will, but I read a lot. I read a lot of Spawns, and I agree with you 1,000%. Spawn stories were good. Todd can write, Todd can write. And when he wrote Spawn, minus a bunch of issues in the middle. He's writing again, and Spawn's been pretty good lately. But you're right about the interior art with Spawn. It's probably not the best this work, and I'm not really knocking Todd McFarlane as much because I can knock him all day. I really can because he's. I mean, Neil Adams says it best about Todd McFarlane. He goes, "That kid came to me every day, wanting me to tell him how good he is, and I kept telling him to quit, get a job, and stop doing this. And I was wrong, but I still say his work's terrible. He should still get a better job." and that's typical Neil Adams. If you don't, he's very blunt and very cool about it. I'm trying to grab a panel here where you can see the difference.
Well, while you're grabbing that, I'll say I've never been able to meet Neil Adams, but from what I've seen in interviews and stuff, he seems to have a bit of that air of arrogance when concerning his work. However, it's hard to knock him for it because, for the most part, he has earned it.
It's Neil Adams, yeah.
Sure. Neil is. It's kind of saying, well, Babe Ruth is really bragging about how good he was a baseball player.
Yeah,
he's still Babe Ruth, Yeah. I mean, of the living artists alive, the living icons, Neil's it. I mean, Neil's way up there. He's done it all.
But there's also people of that caliber who are much more humble.
Yeah, like Joe John Buscema, who used to. Well, actually, Neil's actually really cool. I'm going to say he's a really cool dude. He's just if you get him Chinese food at a con, he'll talk to you for an hour. I'll be there.
He's got to bribe him.
So this is a Captain America from 133. This is a photocopy of it, and you could see this is a book done in the 133 would be late 60s, early 70s, probably. Yeah. Mid 70s, 74 probably around that time. You could see all the. I mean, I'm just going to try to show as much detail as I can on this. You could see everything here, all right?
Yeah.
It's crisp. It's clean. It's readable.
This is one from not long ago. Is this to me just panels?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're letting the colorists do so much work now.
Yeah, I think that's back in the day, an artist. A colorist would get this with what colors to put where and what to do, and that's color guides were big things. And actually, some of these pages have the color guide: make it red, make it green. Daredevil has to be maroon, and I think that's important. That's a Gene Colan Captain America versus a modern day, the modern day Ed Brubaker run Captain America. Not knocking the art. I mean, it's there, but you can see the difference in same character. And it's just a different world. And this is the original piece, so there's nothing on it, and there's no writing. I mean, there's pencil stuff on the back, but there is no instructions. Where if I grab a piece that I have with an actual piece, there's writing all over this thing. There is writing all over this thing, and it's put here, purple face,
Well, and you can see all the details already there. Too,
right.
You know what I mean? Like on the other one you showed, it was like a coloring book. It looked like just the outlines of everything.
Because I think that's the modern computerization of you don't render for depth anymore. Now you color for depth. Would that be right, Alec? Would you call it that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So.
Yeah, there's no reason to waste time inking when you can just go into the computer and just slap a huge piece of color over everything, and it just does the same effect, and it's cheaper and quicker.
Right, and the days of blending colors I definitely see that as a lost art. I just want to bring up this Chamber of Secrets here. This guy's one color, but there's about 7 different versions of orange in that Chamber of Secrets cover.
Absolutely, that's crazy.
And and Bernie did not color his own work ever. Bernie used a pencil and he walked away. That was it. And that's Bernie. But you want to know what? Those pencils are pretty impressive. So.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that good at penciling, what else do you need to do?
Exactly.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I've had a great time. I hope you guys have had a good time. I enjoyed it. Everyone brought an artist, and it was different. We didn't have any trouble there. I didn't think we would. And
I don't think any of us. I mean, but besides you saying that you appreciate Mignola but aren't a fan, I think we all kind of recognize each other's picks is like,
why? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not saying like, oh, I don't think anyone was like, oh, you're out of your mind for picking that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have to say that when it comes to the more 80s stuff, like especially as DC work, like the Batgirl and all, Mignola's fine to me. But when you get into his more independent stuff, like Hellboy and whatnot, that's where his art's kind of it's good. It's better than I can do. It's great, but it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah,
absolutely, and that's fine, man. Like you know, I kind of feel like you're trying to apologize. You don't need to. You don't need to apologize.
Everybody knocks me because I'm not a big Jim Lee fan. I never was. It's just the way I am.
Yeah, I just really want to say thank you, JD, Alec, for stopping by and chatting with this dude, man. I love listening to you guys. Like I was awfully quiet this show, but it's because I just enjoy soaking up everything you guys got to say, man.
I feel like we really ran away with it, but I'm glad that you were enjoying yourself.
That's why we had you guys here, because that's kind of what we wanted to happen.
Yep. Well, thanks to everyone in the chat. We had as high, I believe, as 16 viewers. We still got 13, so thanks everybody. And I will mash the stop broadcast, but I have
hit that thumbs up.
Yeah. If you haven't subscribed to Big Will's channel, please do.
Yes.
But I have a question for the panel when we go off air. It has nothing to do with artists. And I also want to mention, I recently, like Monday or Tuesday, I think, hit my 100 subscribers. So I want to do, thank you. I want to do a appreciation giveaway. So once we're done here, I will do another live stream that's just to serve as that, to tell you what I'm doing. And just for a preview, this is what I'm going to give away.
Look at that. Yeah. That's a beatie, isn't it?
Yeah, it's signed by Mike Zeck and John David.
Look at that. I love that Punisher run. I'm going to enter that contest.
Anyway, so thanks everyone in the chat. Thank you guys. We will stop the broadcast and see you guys next time.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.